And candidly, the shit had risen to the top and it was flowing over, and that's what made me promptly sort of say enough. You know, when you have a long-standing relationship with a close friend or obviously even a family member, you have a tolerance for them because unconditional love works that way, right? You are willing to take them for who they are, and that means the good and the bad. And, you know, in particular with Flag, who I love dearly and is like family to me, there are certain things that I have put up with over the years in terms of his inability to, for example, ask me about myself. Much of our relationship was very one-sided, but because I know him so intimately and because he comes from such a good place, these are certain things that I was kind of willing to look over and be like, all right, he's a little selfish. It's very typical Flag. And the little nitpicking over the course of the last couple of years of him pretending not to know my daughter's names and walking into my house like it's his own, going into my refrigerator, bossing around my staff, being dismissive of people. I finally hit my breaking point when he very casually called my daughter in jest a fucking see you next Tuesday. And I have a different relationship with that word than probably a lot of women. The word in and of itself doesn't really bother me. I mean, Brits use it casually. but you know, so I don't have like that's like an unforgivable word. My challenge with that word is you don't speak to a 16-year-old girl that way as an adult. It's just not appropriate. And you don't speak to your friends' kids that way, and you don't speak to me that way. So when I lashed out at him, it was a buildup of a variety of different things that have happened to me by virtue of taking it. So, like, I have to take accountability for letting those little things consistently slide for a period of 2 years. And while they were building up for me internally, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I think the audience understood it as something that was just unto itself. This was an event that happened between two friends, and Tracy, you need to forgive him. And of course I forgave him after, you know, a lot of conversation and a lot of talking. But the truth is there's a lot more to it. And I don't think that any of us get the confidence to confront people that are close to us without having a history of sort of repeating itself where we take a lot of shit. And candidly, the shit had risen to the top and it was flowing over, and that's what made me promptly sort of say enough. And it was emotional, it was authentic. I take none of it back, and I think it ultimately changed our relationship for the better.
Wow, girl, thank you for breaking that down. And the ownership part is such a powerful part because it's not like you're blaming yourself, but you're taking accountability.
Yeah.
And I think that really, allows you to recognize where maybe we may be accepting bad behavior in other relationships and like calling ourselves on it. Is this okay? Yes or no? And then also in that whole story, I love that you said that you didn't just like forgive him immediately because he said he was sorry because you've got this history. I believe you actually said to him, sorry only counts when you actually change your behavior.
Oh, 100%. And like I said, you know, so many times when we have these types of disagreements with someone that's close to us and boundaries crossed, more often than not, it's not the first time, right? There are little sort of buildups that lead you to the place where you finally can't take it anymore. And that was my last straw, but it ultimately made me re-examine how I fumbled in the relationship as well. He believed that that's just the nature of our friendship, that we poke at each other and we have fun, and we do. But if you don't define limits on what's acceptable and what's not, then yeah, those types of things are going to happen, and eventually someone's going to cross a line that you might not be able to come back from. So after the event, and after a lot of soul searching and a lot of conversations between him and I did forgive him. But it made me, of course, you know, analyze how I allowed it to get to that place and why I accepted sort of mini bad behaviors along the way because of his own insecurities or because how I sort of caretook him. a little bit, and that's my part in it as well. And those are things that I have to look at, and I have to make sure that if I want to set boundaries with someone, I don't get to set them after I've already screwed up along the way with like fuzzy lines, and then all of a sudden I decide to draw a line in the sand. And that's my piece of the puzzle that I had to figure out for myself.
Oh, dude, that's so powerful. I had a quote once. It was something like, a fuzzy target is impossible to hit. And I actually like that. It reminded me when you were saying boundaries. It's like if you're not actually clear on your boundaries, how do you expect someone to actually hold to them and actually know what they are if you're fuzzy on them as well?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't define them and you're kind of like, I assume you understand, you shouldn't speak to me that way. You'd be surprised how many people will run amok. I have teenagers, for crying out loud. So like they test boundaries all the time. And so I'm very clear with them on what my line is in the sand. But in adult relationships, in business and in personal relationships, more so in personal, I think that we do get a little bit fuzzy because we love the person and we take the good and the bad. But that doesn't mean we can't have a moment where we say, okay, time to reevaluate. Where did I go wrong? How did I fuck up? And what can I do? Because it shouldn't even have gotten to that place where that becomes a joke. Calling someone's children or someone's, boyfriend or husband, effing see you next Tuesday is not acceptable on any level, and it never should be. That's not a joke. That was not produced for television. That was 100% me at my limit, losing my shit and saying enough is enough.
Yeah, and because, in fact, if you don't mind me talking about the boundaries you set for your client if they were disrespectful and how you approach that, because I think that would be a great juxtaposition for us to hear how you just explained your relationship with Flag and then with...
I think the dynamic, we have repeat clients, obviously, and the more we work with them, the more we have a personal relationship with them. But typically, when I meet a new client, I set those boundaries out of the gate. Here's what you can expect from me. Here are the things that I'm committing to doing for you and with you. And here I'm available to you at a moment's notice between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. Nothing is so urgent in what we do for a living that there needs to be a phone call after 9 p.m. at night. I already am available to my clients much longer than a typical attorney or a doctor would be, or anybody that is an entrepreneur. And at some point I have to shut it off. So I make that stuff known out of the gate and that those expectations are set. Earlier in my career, I didn't do that. I was like, I'm available 24/7. You call me at 1 o'clock in the morning, I will pick up. I don't do that anymore because I find it doesn't service them, and it sure as hell doesn't service me. If I don't have time to sort of reset in the evenings, then I can't be my best self at 7 a.m. when they actually do need me, and when we're in actually during business hours where we can actually get something accomplished other than complain to one another. So I'm very clear with my clients out of the gates about setting parameters on what their expectations are and what I can deliver.
Can I ask you one more thing about that?
Yeah.
I mean, I guarantee it. They respect you even more because you set those boundaries when you first start.
Absolutely. Like, for example, because I am on a TV show, when I go out on a listing appointment from time to time, they know me from the TV show, and they might say, well, we're looking to have you represent us solely. I will come to the listing appointment with either my co-listing partner and or my director of operations and say, here's the team for you. I cannot be in 10 places at once. I currently have 15 listings on the market north of $5 million in Los Angeles. So there is going to be times where we need to get a client into your house and I'm going to be booked. And if that's the case, these are the people that are going to be there for you during that time. And I set that expectation on the front end so that they understand it.
Question then, thank you for sharing that. It's beautiful. And now, do you set those types of boundaries with your friends and with your partners? And
I'm much better at setting boundaries professionally than I am personally. I mean, I think we could all agree that that's a little bit more challenging. Our relationships personally have so much more emotional important to us, to us thriving. And so I'm willing to sometimes accept a lot less, and that's the journey that I'm on. And again, that's why boundaries can be crossed and you can come back from them. But you know, I'm working on that consistently. I know that's you know, a struggle of mine, defining boundaries within my what I'm willing to accept from my boyfriend, my ex-husband, what my expectations are of my kids. So yeah, I work on it every day.
Dude, so thank you for being so honest, because I think, dude, you're such a freaking badass, and people are gonna be like, oh my God, it's so easy for you. You look so confident. You look so straightforward. Like, I can say this to anybody. And it's so damn important for people to hear, no, I work on this every day. No, it is easy actually for me in the business now, but it's still difficult in the personal life. And I can only freaking relate, girl. It's really easy for me to make decisions, to be a boss, to like really lead in business. The second it comes to my personal life, I'm like, what do you want? Oh, I don't know where to eat. I don't know, right? Like, and I'm so indecisive. And I'm like, what the hell? It's so weird how our maybe our strength or our personalities, when it comes to business, we can be very regimented. But once you bring in the heart, I think as women, we just really do care. And so we can't help but have those ever so slightly sometimes blend together.
Well, and it's difficult, I think, and tell me if you experience this as well. But for me, again, the business piece and being the boss and making decisions comes a little bit easier. I think because of the nature of falling on my face so many times to get to where I am today, and now having that success and that confidence that, you know, yeah, I had it when I was born, but I built on that. And I'm 47 years old. So, you know, when I talk to younger generations about building confidence, I'm like, learn from my mistakes, right? So being that I am where I am today, there is a part of me that goes from professional to personal, and I kind of want to like someone else to be the boss. You know, I kind of don't want to make as many decisions. And maybe that's a part of me that's just exhausted. And there, you know, a part of innately my personality is maybe there's a part of me that wants to take a little, not a back seat, but just rest my weary, you know, head for a minute. And, you know, I'm a strong personality, and I don't typically come with or am attracted to someone with a weak personality. So in my personal relationships, that can be difficult because they're like, well, wait a minute. Like, are you the boss? Are you not the boss? Are we equal? Like, what the fuck is going on with you? And I'm like, I just wish that you would take the reins for once and run the show here.
Oh, dude, this is so freaking important because I love this. Being freaking strong, independent, knowing what you want, going after your dreams, crushing your goals, and still looking to somebody else that's like, yeah, I actually want you to lead. To me, is strength. It isn't a fucking sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength that you go, I don't need to always lead to feel amazing. I can absolutely feel amazing with having someone else lead. And you know what? Right now, it's actually the decision I think is best for me. That is such a big sign of strength. And I think we need to keep echoing that because we do think of it as, I think the outside world anyway thinks of it as a sign of weakness. And I think it's trapping us women because we're not able to say, I just want to rest. Like, I am exhausted. Because we
can be looked at like, you know, someone like your personality or my personality. When we want to take that break, it's like, oh, she's a boss and she's so confident, but this is a farce. And the reality is, it's not. It's understanding and being confident enough to stand on your own 2 feet and make a choice to say, I'm gonna take a back seat on this one. You run with this. That doesn't mean weakness. It doesn't mean anything, but it can be confusing to the people around us. Because, you know, for example, my boyfriend's expectation is I'm running the show all of the time.
As in you.
In all facets of my life. So sometimes I'll find that he has a challenge with like finding a moment where I'm not doing Tracy 10.0. You know, and obviously that's a part of who I am organically, authentically, and I get it. Like and so when I get frustrated and I'm like, I'm tired, you make a plan for us to go somewhere for the weekend if that's what you want. I don't have time. And he's like, I don't know why you're frustrated with me. And the truth is, I'm not frustrated. I just wish you could see the layers of of me saying, I'm giving you an opportunity to step into this and take control of the situation and let me take a rest. And that's very difficult, I think, for the people that love us to understand when's her time, when is she backing out of this equation, and that, I think, is what makes it difficult to be with a woman like myself, because you never know when you're supposed to be on or off, or go along for the ride, or take control of that ride.
Yeah, so actually I wouldn't mind if you wouldn't mind talking about your ex-husband and what ended up happening there, because I've heard you say that he was gaslighting you and blaming you, that the reason why your marriage was ending was because you were just working too much.
Yeah, I want to lead with, we've come a long way since then. And of course, I think the reason I get asked about this a lot is because only very recently have I talked publicly about what happened in my marriage. I spent the better part of 5 years keeping that very personal and close to the vest because I have children. And the kids now are very aware and they're astute, and they probably knew all along, but it was a choice that Jason and I both made to protect them. That said, I came out with it and spoke publicly, and now people really do want to know. And the truth is, he did gaslight me, and there was narcissistic behavior on his part, with the gaslighting, and he's done a lot of work on himself since then, and I think has made a lot of changes for the better. But in those moments when you go through something like that and you're in a relationship, whether it's for 5 years or 15 years like mine, there's so much betrayal and there's so much to recover from. And I think in terms of moving forward and making the decision to finally file for divorce, again, it was my last straw. It wasn't the first time, Again, I talked to you about the fuzzy boundaries. There are certain things that I accepted over the years because I felt till death do you part, right? Like traditionally, that's how we were raised. When you sign on the dotted line in this contract we call marriage, that's what we're committing to. And I really wholeheartedly believed that until all of a sudden I fucking didn't. And that was after, probably 5 years of, I think, both Jason and I being not 100% committed to the marriage and happy, did, obviously an affair eventually happen. And that was my final straw of saying, I'm ready to file. And the recovery from that betrayal was very difficult for me, and it took a lot of years and a lot of girlfriends to kind of reset what that looks like. But the truth is, it's about, in my opinion now, I'm redefining how I look at relationships, how I look at marriage, what that means to me, what I'm willing to accept, what I'm willing to tolerate, what I'm not willing to tolerate, and how do I look at that whole institution. And the truth is, I believe still in the institution of marriage, but I think there's different versions of it. I don't think the standard, in sickness and in health, till death do you part, above everything else is the way to look at marriage. I think it puts women in a situation where, and men in a situation where you're forced to stay in something because you signed up for this tradition that you don't necessarily want to be in. And I think if we can open up our mindset about how we define marriage and how we look at the relationship, then I think we're going to be a lot happier in the marriages that we're in, and a lot freer with how we're able to analyze whether or not we want to stay in them any longer. But, I do work hard, and I expect that that's not going to get in the way, and it shouldn't get in the way of having a healthy and happy relationship. And I still firmly believe that. But it's about us redefining how we look at our relationships personally. That's the only way to, I think, have a successful relationship as a woman that is an entrepreneur and in business and is successful at what she does.
Why the hell is it, I'm really asking, that we accept poor behavior, disrespect, someone pushing you out, like really being mean potentially, and we will keep accepting it. I've heard you even say, like, before it really shit hit the fan, it was like you were kind of like in no man's land, where it was like you're not loving the relationship, but there isn't necessarily a defining thing that pushes you to leave. And like the amount of people that I've spoken to that are just like, it's the cheating that then made the decision. It was the abuse, like, so even with narcissistic relationships, there are people where it's like, if it's just verbal abuse, sometimes it's like, well, is this enough for me to leave? And it's like, if they hit me, then at least it will be easier for me to say, well, yes, they hit me, so I should leave.
And then you'll find an excuse as, you know, that they hit you, but it wasn't really, it was an open hand slap. Like, there's always going to be reasons. I've listened to, I was guilty of it myself for many years. I listened to my friends sort of stay in marriages, you know, for the kids or whatever. You hear it every single day. Everybody's sort of pushing it down the line. Well, I'm just going to push it 10 yards down the line, 20 yards down the line. Before you know it, you're like at, like, you know, you're at the touchdown on their end, and you've completely sort of lost the ability to negotiate on your own behalf. I'm like, what? Because you haven't stood up for yourself, right? But it's defining it differently. You can't sign up for this institution unless you're prepared to follow it to the T. And I don't believe that women today or men today want to follow the old institution anymore. So why are we not defining that more clearly? Why aren't we having that discussion? Why can't we have an open marriage or an open relationship as long as we define it? And I'm not saying that's for me personally, because it isn't. Way too jealous of you know, I'm like, but there's plenty of different ways to have a very successful relationship and or marriage, as long as the two people involved can be candid about what their needs are and what their desires are, and not attach shame to it, and say it from get. And then I think the possibilities are endless, but I still think we're sort of stuck in that old school mentality, which inevitably, by the way, has not served anyone. More than 50% of marriages end in divorce. So who is the old institution really serving? Half of the community? You know?
What up, homie? I got something free and new to share with you right now. How often are you visited by that negative voice in your head telling you that you're not smart enough, that you're not good enough, experienced enough, not fill in the blank? One of the most powerful things you can learn to do in life is to turn that negative voice into your bestie. And I want to teach you how to do that and so much more in my 4 steps to becoming confident workshop. And guys, the most amazing thing is you can actually register for completely free for this workshop. So click the link on your screen and I'll see you on the inside. Yeah, I've heard you even say, like, marriage should be like a lease. You have to renew it every 10 years. I was like, oh, you know, would say that.
I still believe that. I mean, my friend Sam and Natasha and I, you know, talked about that. We were at the my lake house one night, and we were talking, and it was my anniversary, and I had been through some struggles, and I had written a toast to him, and part of that toast was, I'm renewing the lease with an option to back out of that lease. Right? And this was our anniversary toast, and everybody thought it was hysterical, but there was a lot of truth to it, because the reality is the till death do you part piece backs us into a corner where we can't really say what we need to say, because what we might need to say is that we're not happy and we want out. And that doesn't go along with what we signed up for. So it makes us feel like a failure, and no one wants to feel that way.
Yeah, so true. And I wonder, if you don't mind, you just said, oh, I'm way too jealous for that. That surprises me. I'm like, you seem so damn confident, and so jealousy actually maybe helped me think through this. I think of jealousy as being an insecurity.
It's not, you know, I think when you've been through what I've been through in terms of going outside of the marriage and the betrayal that comes along with that, and the fact that it wasn't a dialogue that, you know, we had prior to, executing.
That's very official words.
Yeah. It left me feeling uncomfortable and insecure in my interpersonal relationships with men. And so, that's something that I've consistently have to work on, that I've carried with me. And I think so many women get this. I don't care if you're 20 or 50. At some point you will understand what it means to be betrayed that way. And it affects us on such a deep level, because I think that we connect on such a deep level. When we give our hearts to someone, women typically, we're all in. Like once we decide to make that commitment, it's like all barriers are gone. Any wall that we might have is gone. And so when that is shattered, that wall comes immediately back up. And then it sort of, as an adult, you just begin to chip away. Okay, I got to get back to where I was so that I can be 100% trusting again, because how am I going to give myself to anybody else ever again if I don't feel like I can break down that wall? And it's a lot of work.
I think actually, as you were talking, the thing that probably trips a lot of us up is, I want to get back to where I was. And the truth is, if you've just had a heartbreaking experience, you're never going to go back to where you were, because you are a different human now. You have had your heart broken. And so I think it actually could be more powerful to go, how do I use this to be better than who I was?
Right. And it's definitely been something that I don't think I would take back. As I said, had Jason and I not gone through what we went through, I don't think it's just another layer of who I am today that I'm kind of proud of. It's like a badge of, I went through war and there's some injuries.
And you got the medal to prove it.
Yeah. But now I feel differently about a lot of things that I couldn't have felt differently about, like this institution of marriage and relationships, how I look at them now and how I want to be and how I aspire to have more, a deeper connection than I had, because I went through it. So for me now, moving forward, that's all it's about. I had to have that experience for someone like me, I think, to learn from it.
So true. And the experience can be beautiful. Obviously, like you said, very heartbreaking. In making the decision to leave, was there any shame around it from other people?
None whatsoever. I had a great support system. Very much so. My family was a great support system. My friends that rallied around me were a great support system. And I would say it took me the better part of 5 years to fully recover. Now, full circle moment, my ex-husband is remarried. I've embraced the woman that he's with, who happens to be the woman that he had an affair with. I didn't speak to her or meet her for the first 3 years of their relationship after, we broke up. So I get her. I understand why he chose her. She's quite similar to me in many facets. Yes, she's the younger, newer model. However, all the same things and dreams and beliefs and ideas that I had when I was her age, she has. And I think the work that he had to do, and the reason they probably connected during our marriage, had everything to do with him not feeling big enough and full enough. So we had to find that 28-year-old version of me again to make him feel big enough and important enough, because I had grown and I didn't make him feel big enough anymore, And now he gets it.
Just have to take a moment. Holy smokes. Got so many questions. How?
And it wasn't about age. Like, I've never been like, oh, she's hotter, younger. Like, it's never about any of that.
How do you, was that natural? Because here's the thing, girl, the truth is, 1,000%, I would go, oh my God, I'm older. Oh my God, I'm like, I would make it about me. I really would. How did you not make it about you? I think it's freaking beautiful.
I mean, I won't say in the beginning that I didn't have moments of that. But I really, the second I understood who she was, I went, oh my God, this has everything to do with him. He's meeting me all over again because he required that, because he hadn't done the work. He required what I gave him in the beginning of our relationship when I was 25 all over again, because he lost that pedestal moment of the woman in his life putting him on a consistent pedestal. Now he's had so much growth since then, and I think he acknowledges all of that. But what I don't think he still fully acknowledges is how similar her and I actually are. The 28-year-old version of Tracy is very much, not exactly, but very, very much similarities between the two of us in terms of how we adored him and put him on a pedestal. The pedestal just chipped away until there was not one left. And that left someone who needed that in order to breathe alone. So it makes sense. Like, I get it now. I know why he did what he did. And that makes it a lot easier to forgive him, move on, and understand. But I also have a man in, him in my life that is doing the work to sort of understand that a little bit better. And, we chip away at it, but, we're in a really good place. And to me, that feels really good. I sort of feel like we're not a lot of women that have been through something similar to that can walk away from it and a few years later be having dinner with us as a family with the new wife and myself and the kids, and we all know what went down, and we've recovered from it, and we're stronger because of it. And that's, I think, pretty fucking cool.
Dude, it's so fucking cool because you could have postured.
Oh yeah, I did. In on my own journey back to like a healthy space around it and figuring out what it was really about and doing the work that I've done. Yeah, but it took a minute. It didn't happen overnight.
Right. But how do you then greet her? So number 762 reasons why I freaking love you is you're such a woman's woman. You're like, I have women's backs. I fucking love that about you, girl. So someone who is so supportive of other women, when you see a woman that has an affair with a married man, you don't point the finger at her. You didn't say, oh my God, she's the bitch and you're going to fucking mess with me and my family. You didn't, at least now. I don't know. I'd love to hear if you did.
I did.
Okay.
I definitely did. I had, I wouldn't, she might say I was vindictive.
But no, if you don't mind sharing, because here's the thing, it's really important for me to say this. Some people will stay in that space having this tension, having this friction for the rest of their lives. The children grow up in a toxic environment.
Not healthy.
Exactly. So if you don't mind being very honest and taking us through, if you actually were vindictive, because to your point, you even said, 5 years later, the fact that you guys can all have dinner together is so fucking cool, but I need to know how you got there. The real truth of how the fuck you went from, my husband's had an affair, to now I'm having dinner with a woman.
I don't like feeling unresolved about dysfunction in my life forever. There's a period of time where I can sit with something and go, I just need to sit with this for a minute and really process this and not be reactive, but be fully invested in how I feel about it before I respond. It took me a little longer than I cared to, say as it comes to this marriage and what happened between Jason and I. When it first went down, I was angry. My family was angry. And I would have gone so far as to say he's going to do the same thing to you. I truly believed it, and I was very unhealthily tapped into, I was in a drain, and I just kept going down. And in fairness, I think I had to go through that. I had to go through that anger phase. I was vindictive. I was miserably unhappy. It was a bizarre time in my life. And then I took space from it. I didn't see them for a long time. I didn't communicate with, I communicated with my ex-husband as it related to the children, and that was kind of it. And I went, well, this isn't working either for me. I don't like this. I don't like feeling like someone that I spent the better part of half my life with, who I know better than his family and he knows me intimately in that sense. Like, I can't live in this space of let's have fake communication about our children and keep it moving. And I don't think that he wanted that either. So I started to re-engage, as did he. And there was bumps in the road, you know, because we didn't have boundaries and we had disconnected for a while. So the going from the anger to the disconnect to the re-engagement, that part was challenging because we had to now have new boundaries. We're not married anymore. How do we define that? Like, I have to have respect for your new relationship. How do I get past that? And once I started recognizing that piece of it was missing, and that's why our dynamic was, the re-engagement was not going as well as either of us wanted it to, that's when I finally said, it's time for me to sit down with your partner. And we picked a day, and it was like 5 days and counting, 4 days, 48 hours, you know? Yeah. And I was ready. I really wasn't nervous about it at that point. I was really ready to have like a not angry conversation, but a healthy conversation. And we sat together for 3 hours. We had some wine, we had some lunch, and we just talked. And, you know, she obviously took accountability, which I think was nice to hear, but it wasn't necessarily the most important piece of the puzzle. We spoke about how can we move forward in a healthy way and sort of be the defining moment of how we all envision sort of moving forward as a family. And it was something we both agreed we wanted to be proud of. Like, wouldn't that be cool if we could come from a totally fucked up place and then come full circle and spend holidays together, enjoy each other's company, support each other, be there for my children when I can't be as their stepmom, all of these things. And that's what we put into the conversation. I said, it's gonna take a minute. And she agreed. I said, it's not like all of a sudden we're gonna be, you know, under the tree together. And then lo and behold, we were this Christmas. Christmas morning, mimosas and, you know, opening presents over at their house. And I had a great time. But we put that out into the universe as how we sort of envisioned. Wouldn't it be fucking cool if we could redefine what this looks like for every family that's been through what we've been through and felt like it's never going to be healthy again. It's going to be screwed up for these kids forever. I really wanted to see if we could do that. And so we're doing it.
Fuck, girl, that's such an amazing breakdown.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking me through that. And also talk about what you're freaking teaching your daughters. To not be in a relationship if it doesn't work, to not hold on to a grudge, to actually go through a grief, but then be able to come out with beauty and dignity and respect at the end is so fucking powerful. I have too many people in my life, and I don't know if you do, where they've divorced, 30 years later, they still can't be in the same room with each other. And I have like people in my family that are adults and they're the kids and they're like, oh yeah, shit, mum and dad are going to be in the same room today because it's my 40th birthday. And it's like, it's such a unhealthy way to live.
It's so shitty. And it's so like, again, it goes back to like old traditions and like, obviously if you're going to get divorced, like all bets are off. And why can't we recover properly? Why can't we sort of be in charge of our destiny and what post-divorce looks like? Why can't, and I've always wanted to talk about that, and I've been able to talk about it with a lot more honesty since coming clean about what I really went through and what we both went through as a couple and sort of the recovery of that. Because really the story that was told was I was a workaholic and he couldn't take it anymore, and that was that.
It's way more complicated, and relationships always are.
Oh, yeah.
And you even use the word recovery, and what's interesting is it wasn't like you were bullshitting recovery, like, because what I mean is like, let's just do face for the kids. When the kids are around, we play polite, But
that's
then
bullshit.
It's such bullshit.
First of all, kids are the most intuitive creatures on the planet. If you think that you're fooling your kids, you've got it twisted. They see it all. They know everything. They know. You walk in, and I'm terrible at not wearing my emotions on my sleeve. And even when I've done my very best to fake it, like, I am authentic. It comes out of my pores, right? And for the families out there that feel like they've got their kids fooled, when they wake up in therapy at 20, when you finally do decide to pull the trigger after years of like a bullshit facade, it's going to screw those kids up far more than living authentically, that you're in an unhealthy relationship that's not working for either one of you and you're choosing to leave it. That's how you want your kids to be in their relationships.
1,000%. And even if you don't have kids, how to fully move on if you're holding something to the past. I honestly don't see how you can if you've still got this like wound that you haven't healed. And so in healing it, it's not even the pretend heal, right? Or like the passive aggressiveness, right? You could have been so damn passive aggressive and like do these jabs, right? Like we said at the beginning of the interview, you even said about your friend when you do the little jabs. It's like the jabs are the thing that people don't necessarily call you on. The jabs are the things you can probably do for 10 years, right? And everyone will like feel it, but no one will actually say anything. But there's no way I could think of you being able to heal.
That's the thing. I think, you know, with everything, there's like what are the 5 steps? Like, you have to grieve. You have to, it's okay to be angry. Like, you got, like, the people that are like faking their way through all of those emotions, even as it relates to business, like, it's okay to fail and fall on your face. You should experience that loss as it exactly is and as you're experiencing it. Not push it down the line, because that doesn't serve you. That doesn't allow you to get back up again and feel stronger. I get that question all the time. Like, you know, how did you get the way? I said, because I fell on my face so many times because I did this alone. I didn't really have that many people that I related to that I could look up to. So every time I fell on my face, I did cry and I did scream and I did have too many tequilas because I lost the big deal. And I did have a lot of things to say about it. But the truth is, by virtue of experiencing that authentically, then I was able to get back up and move on. And I think divorce and going through a breakup or going through any sort of trauma like that is similar. If you don't deal with the symptoms and experience the emotion of the loss and the anger and everything that goes along with it, then how the hell are you going to be able to move on? Unfortunately, you know, Jason and his wife were on the receiving end of of my process. But it's brought us to where we are today. So I don't think either of them and myself, I don't think any of us would take any of it back.
All right, so in your growth, and maybe you have, and I'd really be curious to talk about this, in your growth, sometimes, like for me, I was the stay-at-home wife, submissive, do things for my husband. And then when I went into business, I went so fucking hardcore the other way that my husband was like, hey, you know, like I kind of miss the sweetness in you.
Right.
And so I realized, oh shit, I actually have to pull back a bit, because what I did is I just went really tough, hardcore alpha in every aspect of my life. And so because I'd already been married, I had this, you know, dynamic with my husband. He was like, look, I understand why you have to be hard in business, right? Like it's like you're going to war every day. He's like, so I totally get it. But at the same time, what you're doing is you're bringing that harshness back, and you've lost this sweet, nurturing side of you that I loved. And I was like, oh, actually, I totally understand what he means. And I did go too hard. Now with you, in you saying, you were the one that was looking up to your husband on the pedestal. And over time, as you started to get more powerful, more strong, more badass, more ownership of who you are and where you want to go, and you were chipping away at that stall, and now you weren't looking up to him. But earlier you said about your current boyfriend, where you're basically the hard nut, right? I mean, I'll use my own words. You're the one that's the boss, the fucking lady, we're doing this. But also you're looking to him to be like, but hang on a minute, I want you to also handle it. How are you like going to navigate the two of like, you're a fucking badass, but actually you do want people to lead as well?
He naturally is a leader, and I think the difference between the younger generations and I'm with a 28-year-old.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to actually give context there.
But I think men in his generation are a little bit different. I think they're inspired by women. like myself. And I think and that's why, year over year, every single year, you're seeing more and more women in relationships with younger men. So I think there is a different level of confidence that, my husband's generation, ex-husband's generation did not have, where, and again, this comes down to wage gap equality. Like each generation is experiencing it differently. And obviously because I'm my age, the way I grew up, it was just a gap, period, the end. I mean, I was raised in a household where my dad was the boss, my mom was also a boss, but at home. And that was very, very clear, and it was very black and white. And I think Eric is a great example of being a part of a generation where, you can look up to a woman at making money and someone that's successful and be like, go for it. And he's always empowered me, and we've been together for 3 years. And I will say, he knows when I'm falling off the ledge.
What do you mean by falling off the ledge?
Like whether I'm exhausted because I've worked, 4 weeks in a row, 80 or 90 hour weeks, and I've been traveling for work and I'm coming home depleted with like nothing left to give, are moments where, for example, I came home from a work trip a couple months back and there was a bath run for me, a glass of wine, and sushi was already at the house, like waiting. And so I came in, I got in the tub, and I was like, these are things that, maybe financially he can't, fly me on a private jet to another foreign country and, give me that type of experience. But the simplicity in what he is able to give me from an emotional standpoint and from a giving standpoint was so much more actually about me. And my well-being than it was about, I'm going to be showy and take you here, there, and buy you this handbag or send you on this trip. And, to me, that's, it's good for my soul. It's what I need in my life to feel balanced. I don't know if I would find that in someone my age.
That's fascinating. I don't know if you know this, but one of the big things in relationships and knowing whether it's going to succeed or not is if the partner feels seen or not.
Yeah. I mean, I totally believe that. I mean, I think that's a big part of it. I'm very supportive of his career. He works nonstop. But I think what he brings to my life and in terms of giving back, and I don't think either of us ever thought that this relationship was going to be as what it was. It's blossomed into something that I think neither of us had anticipated. But out of that has come something so beautiful, and whether or not it's, till death do you part, or however long we make a choice to be together, those moments are so important. Like he brings me back down to earth and reminds me that I need to sleep. I need to take care of myself. I need to do things that are good for my well-being and my health and my wellness versus, being out in the public eye at the right restaurants and, having the right handbag or any of that shit, which at the end of the day, I see a lot of people, particularly in LA, that are focused on all of those things.
Did you have to face judgment when you started dating him because he was so much younger than you?
Absolutely.
How did you deal with that?
I told him to eat shit. True.
Fuck yeah, you did, girl.
I really did not give a fuck. I just didn't. And
not at all.
No.
Even people close to you.
No.
Fuck yeah.
No, I really didn't, because if you know Eric and the people that know me intimately that have an actual relationship with him and made an effort to really get to know him, know who he is. He's a deep down an incredibly solid human being, sometimes more so than, the men that are my age. And so when you have a foundation like that for like a solid human, the people that I said know us intimately are like, he's a good guy. Now, whether or not you guys end up together forever is not the point. You're in a relationship that's much healthier than the relationships you've been in the past, and we like this for you. You're healthy, you're happy, you've never felt better, you're rested. I'm not going out all the time. I'm more successful, I'm more productive. Like, this is because the man in my life is there supporting me and lifting me up, and also sort of drawing a line saying, I don't really think that you need to, like, we need to go out tonight. Like, I think actually it would be nice if we just spent some time alone. And I'm like, okay, great. You know, it's nice to kind of have that and sort of be brought back down.
How are you able to build trust back again from your last relationship and now being in this new relationship?
Honestly, I that's again a daily sort of stay in your body, try not to go back to the trauma of what that was, and trust that if it does happen again, you'll make the decision that's right for you, and you won't wait 5 years to do it, right? I don't think in relationships we can ever fully trust that someone isn't going to do something outside of the bounds of what your agreement is between the two of you.
How are you going to trust yourself then to hold true to that?
Well, I guess I have to find out, right?
Hopefully you don't, but...
Right? But assuming that I'm presented with that scenario again, there won't be second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth chances.
Yeah. The reason why I ask is I think that that's something that a lot of people struggle with when they've been cheated on. It's like, wow, I don't trust myself anymore. I don't trust myself that I'm going to be able to spot it, that I'm going to be able to leave again, or that I'm not going to be able to lose myself again in a relationship. I totally
relate to that on every level. I think that any woman or man that's been through that and has been truly betrayed and really caught off guard is a really difficult recovery process to fully trust again. I don't even know if I'm 100% there. I don't know if I ever will be, but I have to try, and I have to give myself to it fully. And the only way to find out if you're capable of it is by virtue of experiencing it.
I heard you say, though, that the judgment always came from women.
Yeah. You know, this is an interesting topic because for so long, you know, being sort of the feminist that I am, I've looked at men as being the reason that we are not, you know, equal on all fronts. And over the course of the last few years, I've done some soul searching on that, and just even looking at the women around me, women across the board on social media channels, and I've recognized that, you know, the competitive nature between women to get to the top is one piece of the puzzle. And then I also think, again, my generation, the generation in front of me and the generation in front of that generation, are all still, everybody's behind their little computer on social media, sitting in the dark, judging. I think the younger generations are a little bit different. But I think women typically are our biggest challenge today. I think there's a problem with the way that we all grew up, and it's very difficult to break out of those patterns because we were raised in that. At 47 years old, for me to be who I am every single day and be this feminist, it's like work. I've had to like challenge myself in certain areas and be like, well, why can't? I remember I hired, here's an example. I hired a new agent on my team by the name of Shelby. Shelby I met in Mexico at a 50th birthday party. She's 25 or 20, she was 25 or 26 at the time. Gorgeous model, you know, great on social media and Instagram, but a model nonetheless. And a couple years later, she came to me and wanted to sell real estate. Smart girl, totally has the charisma for it. But you know what was the first thing I did? I started saying, well, she's gonna have to like stop modeling and doing the whole bikini thing on social media to be taken seriously. And then I was like, no, do you know what I'm saying? Like I did the same fucking thing. And by the way,
What up, homie? I got something free and new to share with you right now.
How often are you visited by that negative voice in your head telling you that you're not smart enough, that you're not good enough, experienced enough, not fill in the blank? One of the most powerful things you can learn to do in life is to turn that negative voice into your bestie. And I want to teach you how to do that and so much more in my 4 steps to becoming confident workshop. And guys, the most amazing thing is you can actually register for completely free for this workshop. So click the link on your screen and I'll see you on the inside.
The people that surrounded me in business were like, ooh, she's really going to have to reel back on, because she couldn't possibly be successful in real estate and wear a bikini. Now, granted, there's fine, you're not going to wear a bikini to a listing appointment, but perception is everything. And I said, well, then if I'm going to stand here and say all of the things that I'm saying about being a feminist and I should be able to wear a half top and make, $10 million a year, then I have to also get behind the women underneath me that are doing the same thing and actually elevate them, support them, and make them into the little bosses that they are. And that's exactly what she's doing. I said to her, I even told her, pretty much this story. And I said, there's no reason for you to have 2 separate accounts. You do you. And, as long as you show up to work and give it 110%, I don't care what the perception of you is online. I care that you know what you're talking about when you walk into the room, that you're connected, and that you are ready to talk to this client about their home and how you can best service them. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. And she has that in spades. Now, if she did not have that charisma or that ability to connect, that would be a different story. But she had it. So the one thing that was holding her back was that she was a bikini model. And not just a bikini model, but there were a lot of these pictures of her online. Well, that's bullshit. Why can't she be both? And so I had to really second guess myself and remind myself that it doesn't stop right there. And I think that's a big part of where the older generations look at even me. They look at me and say, you can't wear that and be successful at the same time. Well, why the hell not? I'm actually currently doing it. And I think that's part of what my new messaging is. It's talking to women about really supporting each other, because I think that's it's kind of bullshit. Like, we say we support each other to a point, but then don't be too feminine. Don't be too comfortable with your own body. You're still a mom. What kind of mom are you if you dress like that? All of these types of comments are completely farcical when it comes to, talking about women online. And it's made me absolutely bananas crazy. So now it's like all I want to focus on and talk about, because we can't point the finger at men forever for holding each other back. We have to elevate each other and be able to be all of the things that we are. And that includes boobs and a butt and a pair of heels, and however we feel like doing our hair and makeup. That's what makes us women. We are completely different than men. And we have to celebrate all of those differences, not just how they fit into being an old version of becoming a feminist.
I love your energy around this. I feel the same, and I don't know how to talk about it, because I have a freaking show called Women of Impact. My whole life is dedicated to supporting women, elevating women, helping women. And yet people sometimes still watch this show, homie, and there's people across the sea, and they just, in the comments, rip the woman apart, or rip me apart. What the hell's up with this woman's hair? Or like, why does she talk in a squeaky voice? I had one guest who was a doctor. She was giving advice on how women can help with their hormones and self-care. Right? So her whole life is dedicated to helping women and their hormones. And the comments is because she wore a crop top.
Story of my life.
Women in the freaking comments. Oh, guys, I read the comments. I read the freaking comments. In the comments, they were like, I can't take this woman seriously because she's showing her belly. How can she, if she wasn't showing her boobs, I would take her advice more seriously. And I'm like, you're watching.
The reason we are totally fucked. Like, that is the bottom line. Because at the end of the day, if we're the ones elevating each other, and call it 50%, and I'm shooting statistics out without any, so 50% of us are really truly elevating women as a whole, But the other 50% are saying, I'm here to elevate you if you do it the old-fashioned way. But outside, you sound like you're smart and you have your shit together and you've done all the things. And here's the list of all of your accomplishments. I'm here for that so long as you do it the way I say you should do it, because traditionally that's the way it was done.
Yeah, as long as you do it within my value system.
Right.
And that's where it's like, it's so damn important to keep talking about this sort of thing. And even with the show, I try to have as many diverse types of women as I possibly can, because here's what I'm not saying. Every woman should go and have business and be a badass and crush it in work. No. What life do you want, and what the hell is holding you back? I got you. That's what this show is about.
Right.
And so even with what we're talking about today, it's been about relationships, it's been about business, it's been about friendships. But the whole point is, how the hell, Tracy Tutor, do you stand up and be a freaking strong woman on a daily basis when you're getting all this stuff coming at you? Whether this stuff is other women hating on you, whether it's, you finding out that your husband's cheated on you, whatever that stuff is, how the hell do you keep showing up? Because a lot of women don't. You've just shared over an hour, God knows how long, of all the tactics and tips that you do. That's what I want to keep focusing on, right? Hey, you at home, stop writing a comment about, oh my God, I can't believe she dates someone that's 20 years younger. Why do you care? And it's so damn disheartening, girl. It's so damn disheartening to think that because of our own belief system, if it doesn't align with what if what you do doesn't align with my belief system, then I'm only going to tear you down. Why not freaking support?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I find is it only inspires me to keep doing it.
The haters on you inspires you.
It only inspires me to keep having the dialogue, keep dressing the way I want to dress, whether that's in a crop top, which I get a lot of shit for, or wearing a skirt that's, whatever that looks like to the women. If I keep doing it, they will eventually, as long as I'm still speaking from the same mindset, as long as I'm still successful, as long as my messaging is no different, eventually they'll kind of go, okay, well, I guess she's as smart as I thought she was, and I guess the top that she's wearing is sort of irrelevant, isn't it? And that's sort of my mission, to continue to, if I stop doing what I'm doing, then that dialogue isn't had until the next woman that comes along that maybe doesn't have the balls to stand up for themselves quite yet because they're a little bit younger. And so then you're always conforming. And if we don't stand up and not conform to what these old ideals were, then we're never going to actually change the whole system. And so to me, it's always going to be continue, like, y'all inspire me. The more you talk shit, the more I'm going to continue to be exactly who I am, say exactly what I'm thinking all of the time, and just be 100% authentic. And it seems to be working. So,
fuck yeah, girl. And I don't want to presume, but I do feel like sometimes a lot of the hate just comes from insecurity, right? It's like, I wish I had the confidence to dress like that. I wish I had the confidence to just say, yeah, I'm divorced, I'm going to go after a guy who's 20 years younger than me. Like, and so because maybe people don't have the confidence, the flip side is to actually say why it's wrong, because now you don't necessarily have to.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know that, right? Like, social media trolls, they're all insecure. And that's a very easy way to compartmentalize them, right? And so that we can move on with our day. But the truth is, social media is how people communicate. It is a big part of how we're all out there and having success that we're having. And if we don't continue to have the dialogue on how to shift that narrative, then we're going to continue to have sort of these internet trolls that actually are valued. There's value there. There's a reason these different blogs and social media accounts are created. There's a reason bots are, these things are successful, because people buy into it. And what we don't want to see is people buying into it anymore. So in my opinion, in order to stop that bullshit, we have to keep stepping up, keep stepping out of our comfort zones, continue to battle this in an effective way so that, we change the actual dynamic. We shift their opinion. And more often than not, when I do have a dialogue with a troll for whatever reason, not every time, But more often than not, they'll say, wow, I just never really thought that you would actually respond to this. Sorry. And I'm not emotionally affected by it either way, but it's more of a shift of, I'd rather connect with you and explain to you that the reason I will continue to do this is so that I can shift your mindset about it. I'm not here to upset you. I'm here to shift your mindset that I can be many, many things, and those things include sexiness, funny, and really fucking smart at the same time. Like, why can't we have all three? Why, if you're smart and successful as a woman in business, do you have to be one note? I'm over it.
Where's that fine line between helping them, right? Like, actually, I think that if I say this, maybe I'm opening a door that you haven't seen before, and defending yourself.
I mean, I think in some cases, you know, when it's tapped into my relationship with my children, I definitely have a little bit of a different messaging surrounding that. But my kids are also old enough to have their own minds on social media. And like I said, they're little feminists in the making. And so they can speak quite eloquently and in a way that has worked, I think, wonders. Because obviously I can also not be a good mom because I work too hard and I dress too sexy. So therefore, I'm setting a bad example for my girls. Both my girls are unbelievably successful in their own right. They're good kids. They get good grades. They're on an incredible path of their own, and they're thriving. And they'll chime in when they feel like it on their own. And I can't tell you the amount of times I've read some of Juliet's responses on social media to different people, and I'm blown away with what she's been able to say. And I think, you know, so are my followers, candidly. Like, wow, this little 17-year-old has quite a bit to say and is really effective. I mean, God help everyone when she's 25. You know what I mean?
She learned the lessons from her mum.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, it's like really having the skills to defend yourself in certain moments, or having the skill to let something roll off your back. Like, and this is really, you know, beautiful full circle of where we started from. I find it even now sometimes difficult for myself. And a lot of it, that's why I'm actually leaning in a lot into health. Because I'm like, if I'm just tired, if I haven't eaten, if I'm overwhelmed, I'm way less likely to let something roll off my back and then like defend myself if someone comes at me, like, come at me, bro.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm more likely to do that on days that I'm not feeling great and exhausted, versus on days that I'm feeling confident because I've had a great sleep, I've had a great day, whatever. Like, in those moments, I'm more likely to let it roll off my back.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. Because this has now become more recently a mission of mine, I'm conscious of that. So despite how I'm feeling that day, I'll really try to shift. I'm beginning a shift in how I react to these types of comments, because my bigger goal is to sort of have women realize that we're holding ourselves back by doing this to each other. We should be our biggest advocates, not the reason that we're still not there.
Yeah, and even in what you were just saying, it's like, if someone said, I can't take you seriously because you wear heels and you wear low-cut tops, versus you can't be a good mum because you wear heels and low-cut tops. I assume that the impact it has on you, to your point of like, when it's to my kids, obviously they're older now, but when they were younger, did you have more of that like protection? Like, okay, now you've actually triggered the thing inside me that's not gonna, I can't let this roll off my back.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they're my babies, and you know, I feel very responsible along with Jason for the women that they're becoming. And you know, when your kids become teenagers, it's like a whole different world. They have their own thoughts. They, you know, you're like old, and they have their own vision of how they want their life to be. Now, I could either take that and be offended by it, but honestly, I embrace that in them. And so when they were younger, these types of comments would get at me a little bit more. But now, because they follow me so closely in my business, and really what I am all about is women empowering other women, they're like my little empowerment chicks. So Scarlett a little bit less so, and again, she's only 14, but Juliet's like 17 going on like 30. She's just like, listen, here's how I'm going to put it to you, ladies. And she'll, chime in on her own. And that sort of affirms that without me having to say it, that the little women that I've raised really well. And they're making good decisions. They know how to speak on behalf of themselves. They know how to elevate themselves, and they know how to be heard. And that to me is the job speaks for itself. I don't have to defend it.
I love that, but because I don't have children, like the mama bear effect is very fascinating to me, because every time I hear about pretty much any badass, powerful woman, it's always just like, well, I kind of let things slide off my back if people are insulting me, if people are doing this to me. Like, we always kind of let the things go when it's happening to you. But when it happens to someone in your life or someone you really care about, like, I can't even remember the stats. I'm going to pull something out of my ass right now, but it's something like 70% of women are more likely to fight for their colleagues' pay raise than their own pay raise. Because you're more likely as a woman to advocate for someone else over yourself. What would you suggest if you weren't a mother of like, or in fact anybody, of how we start to actually advocate for ourselves first?
Right. I mean, it's so true. I was watching this Korean new show. You guys got to see it. It's called Glory. And it's about, it's obviously in South Korea, but it's about a young girl who was bullied by some high school students, and she spends the better part of 20 years coming back for revenge. And it's really good. But there's this instinctual thing, I think, that happens with women. And I don't know, maybe not for every woman, but for me, since I was a kid, if there is an underdog, I am their protector. If there is someone that isn't getting paid equally, then I'm coming to bat for them. Like, I've just always been that way. And I used to attribute it to just being a woman. And that's part of just like our makeup and who we are. But I definitely have not advocated for myself early enough as a young, entrepreneur coming into business. It took me until now to finally start beginning to, advocate for myself in the last, call it 8 years of my career. But the first 15 years of my career, I spent advocating for everyone else. And that's just the truth. And so, again, the reason why I wrote the book, and you and I had talked about this before, I really wanted young women to connect to it, because I didn't have that book or that mentor that I understood or that I related to, because, they said fuck every so often. I was like, oh, they make mistakes. They're not just polished 100% of the time. They speak with authenticity. I didn't really have anyone to look up to growing up. So I fell on my face 150 times and had to figure out how to get back up and become successful. I don't want the 20-somethings of the world to have to go through what I went through. Like, we can cut that in half by, talking to each other, supporting each other, advocating for each other and for ourselves, starting, outside of college or even outside of high school, rather than when you're 38. It's a little late.
Yeah.
A little late to the game,
Mahomie, I could talk to you forever. Where can people find you and all the great stuff you're doing?
You can find me on social media at Tracy Tutor on almost all channels. And also, again, looking for any sort of real estate opportunities at www.tracytutor.com.
Keep watching to learn how to be damn resilient during those hard frickin' times. So there's only one place to start with you, and that's happiness.
Yeah.
So break it down for me, girl. When I heard you say that our focus on happiness is actually the most detrimental to us, you got my attention.
Good. Well, I'm glad, because it's something I'm really speaking out against. I started out as a happiness researcher, and along the way realized that we were sort of misleading people by saying it was the feelings of happiness that are contributing to all of these positive outcomes. It's the thinking patterns that sometimes give us happy feelings that are really connected to all of these other variables that we're studying. So it's misguided. If we anchor our goals in a fleeting feeling, we set ourselves up for failure. And I see so many people, so many clients and so many, people in my talks who just want to be happy all the time, and they're so miserable. And, I started to think about then, well, if it's not happiness, what is that sort of magic tool, magic piece? And I started to look at, the most successful, content people I know, and it's not happiness at all that makes them who they are. It's that they are content and in a place of success, not in spite of their hardships, but because of them. And really, it's the resilience piece that we need to learn rather than trying so hard to be happy all the time.
Yeah. Why do you think we focus on the happy?
Because it feels good, right?
In
Happiness
that
feels
moment.
good in the moment.
Yeah.
And a good way to describe it, sort of, and if you could bear with me to be a little
Yeah.
neuroscience-y for
Let's
a minute.
do it. I love
the brain. But basically, when we feel these sort of joyful feelings, we release something called dopamine. And you might have heard of it before, but it triggers about 5 receptors in our brain that is really short-lived, but it also triggers our reward and motivation system in our brain, which always wants us wanting more, right? So we feel the feeling, we're like, oh, that feels really good, I want more of it, and more of it, and so we're never fully satisfied by it from a sort of a brain perspective. But contrary to that, when we feel those deep-seated sort of contentment, that fulfillment, we release something called serotonin, which has 15 receptors in the brain, and it's a much more lasting feeling, it's much more satisfying, and it doesn't trigger this reward system in our brain that always wants us having more. Happiness comes and goes throughout the day. It's a cycle, and so when you really just want desperately to be happy, and you have all these to-do list items like, I've got to meditate to be happy, I've got to journal to be happy, and you never can get to them, right? Because the day gets so busy, and you have other responsibilities to fulfill. You end up ending your day thinking that you're a total failure because you didn't do all these things on your to-do list to be happy, and now you're even more miserable.
I so love that you brought
I mean?
up that, because it is so true. And I've heard you actually talk about gratitude.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people talk about gratitude now. So I sat down, I'm trying to do it every morning, and it just feels forced.
Right.
And it feels like another job. Like, I've already got so many things in my life that I have to stress about and think about doing, that if you're striving for happiness, now it's almost like one extra thing that you've got on your to-do list.
Exactly. I do think it's important to be grateful, to have a grateful perspective. I think the way that we're going about it in our culture is wrong. Like you said, I think that if it doesn't work for you to wake up every day and think about 17 things that you're grateful for, or, every night for 20 minutes, like journal because you have nothing else, you have that time for yourself, great if that works for you. Often it doesn't. So I talk about tips and tools in the book, the things that are actionable that you can integrate in your life. But if it doesn't feel good, if it feels forced, don't do it. Right? Again, it's about, really trying to integrate these concepts in a way that resonates with you. And it came to me when I was trying to meditate myself. Meditation can be great for people, right? There's so much research to show its benefits. I get that. It doesn't work for me in the way that I wanted to, and I felt myself being so frustrated. I'm like, why can't I just meditate, right? And all these thoughts going through my head, and I'm thinking like, wait, I can't meditate. But that's the whole thing about mindfulness. It shouldn't be forced. It should be a part of your day-to-day. And I was going about it in totally the wrong way by putting this pressure on myself. I'm actually a very mindful person, and I realized that I'm pretty meditative throughout my day. There's moments where I get into a place where I'm in a meditative stance, like whether, I'm like just even looking at my closet or washing dishes or in the shower. Like, there's ways that you can be meditative without actually meditating, right?
God, it's so powerful, because I beat myself up over the fact that I couldn't meditate. And I was like, well, this isn't helpful. Isn't the whole point of meditating to relax you? And actually it became a source of stress for me.
Yes.
But if you're a person that always strives for perfection, then it kind of becomes a spiral. So how do you stop people from trying to get perfect at these types of things?
Well, the first thing you have to understand and realize is you can never be. All of these things, all of these skills that you learn have to be in flux. They change all the time, just like you and I change all the time. So the sooner we realize that nothing is really fixed, you can let go of that need to always be perfect. Perfect doesn't exist. Perfectionism comes from this need to control, this need to want to be really good at things, to excel. There's a way to channel it, just like when we feel stressed, there are positive ways to be stressed. There's a way to channel perfect that can keep you motivated. But to understand that there's a limit and that good is good enough. And that really perfect doesn't exist. It's just in our imagination, and it's pressure that we put onto ourselves to keep going. So to reframe that for yourself is really important. And to know that meditating and all of these other tools in your toolkit can be wonderful, but they have to work for your lifestyle. Some of my clients, and I talk about it in the book, on their drive home, they use that time instead of being on the phone or instead of listening to music to just sit in quiet. Their brain might be going a mile a minute. They're practicing how to reframe and how to just look at the trees floating by and not be frustrated by the cars packed in front of them, right? But that's meditating for them. That's their window, right? So really, it's anything in your life can become something that you're really good at, but it's never going to be perfect.
I love it. Okay, so take me through. There's someone right now listening and they suffer from it. They're a perfectionist, so it either stops them from trying something because they're too afraid to fail, or they're in the middle of something and they just don't know how to stop, right? Good enough. What's that first tip you would give them to say it is good enough?
Everyone is at such a different place with it. And a lot of perfectionists struggle with insecurities and not feeling like they're ever really good enough either. So I can't give you just that one thing. But what I can say is that I found that sort of an internal dialogue can work really well. And most of our time is spent being really negative about ourselves internally. Okay, we process so much self-talk and we don't even notice it. It's totally subconscious, right? But it's like constant, and most of it is negative, sadly. So if you can, for one moment, just step back and tell yourself, I am enough. This is enough. And just honestly repeat that, as awkward as it's going to feel at first, your brain will slowly shift into believing it. And I remember even with this book, I kept telling my editor, my publisher, like, okay, give me one more week. I need one more day.
Because you were struggling with perfection.
I kept feeling like, okay, I need to tweak this and da-da-da-da. And it kept shifting for me, and I kept having like these sleepless nights. Oh, I forgot to include this, or I want to include this, or I want to say it a different way. And I remember my editor saying to me, just rip off the Band-Aid. Like, it is an awesome book. Like, you've done it. You're done, right? So another tip is, really reach out to someone you trust, who can be an honest, someone honest, who can open up some of your blind spots too, if you have them. We all do. To say to you, like, it's enough. It's good. You're good. You're done. Right? In that moment too. That can be really helpful, because most perfectionists don't like to seek help from anyone.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Right?
Very true.
It's very hard. And in our society doesn't really encourage that either. We're sort of encouraged to be independent and not like rely on anyone, which I think is sad. It's not the way humans are meant to be. Yeah. It's not how we optimize our mental well-being, or any well-being for that matter. But yeah, those are just some tips and tools. Yeah.
That's awesome. I remember being in a situation where I just couldn't let go. Adding a bit more, do it a bit more. And my husband turned around to me and he's like, you're never done.
Yeah.
And actually I was like, wow, you're right. I'm never going to be done.
It's exhausting.
It is. But almost recognizing that you could keep going, because like you said, perfection doesn't actually exist.
No, it's a journey.
Yeah.
It's a process. And really, when we say we want it to be perfect, what we're saying is we want to keep working on this.
Yeah.
We like this, or something about it is calling us. So what about what you're doing is resonating with you? And so letting that have an end, and then moving on to something that's maybe related or something similar but different, right? That you can still keep holding on to that, those interesting, whatever it's coming up in you, but shifting, to a different gear.
That's so powerful, identifying what it is about it that is giving you some form of satisfaction that's making you not allowing you to let go.
Right.
That's strong.
Right, because what's important to understand is that perfectionists, who keep working on things and can't let go, it seems like a negative experience. it seems to be, right, exhausting, frustrating, you know, oh, I just want to get it right. But really, if you go under the layers, if you peel the onion and get to the core, you're holding on to it for a reason.
Oh my God, I love that so much. Okay, so let's talk about challenges and how if you can see it as a positive, can actually change everything.
Yeah.
Because so many people, they find a problem and they just stop.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I can't do that because of this. And that's where they end up, I think, derailing on their goal. But you say it's like a great thing that can happen.
Oh, yeah. Challenges, I mean, mistakes are exciting. And challenges are part of the growing process, the growing pains of life. So the sooner we can recognize the opportunity within our challenges and failures, the sooner we bloom, right? So I really encourage people to invite challenge into your life in some way. Of course, I'm not talking about, you know, life-threatening challenges. I'm talking about knowing who you are and knowing how to implement certain things bit by bit that make you work and strive towards something, that make you uncomfortable so that you can grow and strengthen from it. I always say, like, you know, if you think about physical therapy, for example, if you break a limb or someone has a hip replacement, they never say to you, like, go lie in bed for 5 months and you'll be fine. Like, you'll just get up from that bed and walk. You'll be great. Yeah. Nobody ever says that, right? What do they say? You need to start moving when it hurts the most. Like, the minute it happens, get on that floor and start doing push, like, you know, whatever. You have to activate the very thing that is broken or that hurts. There's a reason for that. So you get stronger. And the same, our brain works the same way. So if you can challenge yourself appropriately, invite things into your life that make you uncomfortable, you give yourself the opportunity to grow and to strengthen. And, you know, with challenges, a lot of it is really perception, because what you believe becomes your truth. Yeah. It becomes everything. So if you can approach a challenge as something that, yeah, it's difficult, sure. It's going to be hard. It might even hurt. It might be painful, emotionally, physically, whatever it is. But you're going to grow, you're going to problem solve, you're going to work through it, versus a challenge being a threat, right? That's two very different perspectives. And what happens with the human body when it's threatened, right? Fight or flight. Like, our brain seizes up. We don't know who to call. We don't know what to do. We aren't clear in our thinking process. It's a very different experience. And that's why you have two people who are dealt with the exact same situation and who handle it very differently.
Perception is everything.
Right.
I really do believe that.
Right.
So how do you get someone to make that shift when it doesn't feel real to them?
Yes, because a lot of people are used to negative thought processes, right? And, you know, and I think the reason for that is because they have allowed the emotion attached to their thought to consume them.
Right.
And they're afraid, right? And so, you know, when you're able to see an emotion for what it is, to look it almost in the face and say, like, fear, I see you, or jealousy, I get that, you're there, you give it less power over you, right? When you see it for what it is. So when you're able to detach yourself from that emotion, feel it, certainly, don't run from it. That's another reason why people can't change their lens with which they see their world.
Because they run from it.
Because they run. Lean into it. Like, accept the feelings. Our culture is so afraid of the negative. We're trained to just always want things to be great and things to work out and our jobs to make us happy and our marriages to make us happy and all our kids to be everything happy, happy, happy. That we have, like, become, it's not even human. We have to feel the negative. I mean, if you're always happy, there's something really wrong. Right. Right? So feel the feeling, you know, do whatever you need to do to see it for what it is. And only then are you able to move through that pain and challenge, look at it a different way, and see the opportunity that lies within it. And sometimes if you know it's not going to feel good, that's a sign that you should try it, right? And again, this is all, you know, within reason. Right. But sometimes, like, let's say in a relationship, for example, you know, whoever your partner is, you're dating someone and there's something you're really interested in about that person, but it's uncomfortable to you. Maybe you should spend some more time with them instead of running away from the relationship. Maybe that person is going to open up a whole world in you that you don't even know existed, a different part of your personality that you've been so afraid of tapping into, right? Not all discomfort is bad.
Yeah.
It can be really, really positive.
Do you know who Wim Hof is?
No.
The Iceman?
No.
So he basically ran a marathon in the
I've
Arctic
heard of,
without
yeah.
his shirt, no shoes and everything. And he came on our show and he was talking about a 30-day challenge where you basically take a cold shower straight.
Yeah.
And the first thing I was like, I'm not doing that. That sounds like it sucks. And then immediately I said, that's why you have to do it.
Yeah.
And every morning, I've been doing it for 30 days. I'm up to like day 25.
Good for
Every
you.
morning, I'm like, this sucks. Why are you doing this? And I'm like, I'm reminding myself that because I don't want to do it, I force myself to do it.
Right. And you're training yourself also to be flexible.
Right.
Which is a huge part of the resilience process. And I talk a lot about flexibility in my book and how to actually train yourself to be flexible. I think it's actually one of the core principles of resilience is being able to pivot, whether it's because, you know, your schedule has changed or something has gone off or it's not exactly as you expect it to be, right? There's so much in life that happens that you're not prepared for. And to be able to have the cognitive and emotional flexibility to be able to pivot, problem solve, and think of something new and build on that is critical. Get out of your routine. Do something totally different for a little while. If every single morning you wake up and take a shower, next morning, don't do it. Take a shower in the afternoon. See what happens.
But how do you okay, that's great.
You know what I mean? Like literally, like take
Yeah.
little things and shift them for yourself to get out of the rut.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you do that when you have kids?
Kids train you to be flexible.
Oh, I guess that's true.
Yeah, I mean, they've taught me things. They've had me practice things that I couldn't just engineer for myself because nothing ever goes as planned.
Okay, like
with
what?
kids. I mean, anything from as simple as, you know, we're getting ready to go to school and my daughter decides it's a really good time to put a bowl of oatmeal on her head, like, and all over my shirt, and I'm supposed to be on TV a minute later, right? It's like. Really? You know, so you're forced to pivot. You know, so many things pop up throughout the day that you just can't possibly be prepared for. So you're trained, you know, as a parent, you're just kind of like, all right, let's figure it out. Let's figure out how to do this. Let's pivot.
That's so interesting. As someone who doesn't have kids, my mind went to like, oh, well, I would think like, okay, my kid has to eat at 6 o'clock. Okay, well, so I would think it was like super regimented.
So it is. So what I'm talking. So yes, I'm big into schedules with my kids, and I think people need routine to function. I think routines and schedules are wonderful, especially for young children, to give them a sense of comfort. They know what's coming up. They know what's expected of them. What I meant is when there's a shift in routine, being able to kind of be flexible is critical, and to teach your kids to do the same in the right way so that it doesn't freeze you and you know, create all sorts of issues in the future. But within those routines, you have to be ready for a lot to happen.
That's what I find fascinating because it's like I feel like, do I go down one path or the other? But it's actually both.
It's always both. Yeah. And to practice flexibility, break the routine a little bit sometimes too. You know, I was noticing my son is very into the rules and routines. And so I decided one day, instead of doing what we normally do when he gets home from school, I just kind of shifted it and did something different with him, and he was like super uncomfortable with it, which let me know that it's even more a reason to do this and to practice this with him, right? So, and it was fun, and he enjoyed it, and I think it's kind of helping him be more comfortable with that. Yeah.
Talk to me about how I found this so fascinating. So your notion on feelings we just spoke about, like you have to allow them to feel, and being a parent and implementing that with your kids. Talk to me about that because I found it so fascinating.
So with children, you know, and I do a lot of talks and seminars on this as well, you know, because everyone's like, oh, I just want my kids to be happy. Really? Do you? Because if they're always happy, that's a problem. They're not going to always be happy. So if that's what you want for them, you're always going to be left, you know, yearning for that. And that's going to make them feel like they can't really do what you want of them, right?
That's interesting.
Just like I say to parents, you know, when you are constantly fixing things for your children or problem solving for them, you are telling them that they are not capable of it themselves. And that's a much, much harsher sentence than just doing it for them, which, I mean, they should practice all the things that you're doing for them anyway. But it's also destroying their confidence, right? And their sense of self-worth.
Explain that a bit, because it's so powerful.
So when you tie your child's shoe, for example, super simple, but when you do it because you're running late, you're not only doing it for her and she's not getting the time to practice tying her shoe, she's also learning that you don't think she can. And that's really, really powerful. And as they grow, bigger things will happen. And if you are the one that puts the call into the teacher because she's unhappy about something, again, you are telling her that she is not capable of having a voice and advocating for herself. If you are the one helping her with homework because she can't finish her project in time, you are telling her that she isn't smart enough, or she can't challenge herself enough, or she can't practice enough to get good at something. And we do this in our relationships too. I mean, forget children, like if you don't have children, I mean, even in our relationship, if you are constantly telling someone what to do and how to do it, you are telling them that they're not capable, and eventually they won't be capable, right? So, so it's really critical to let our children do what they need to do to practice life.
Was that easy for you to do?
No.
Okay, so
It's the hardest thing ever as a parent. It is so hard to watch your child be uncomfortable, right? To struggle. It's innate. It's like a knee-jerk reaction to want to protect them, to want to do things for them, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I even catch myself. It's like, he forgot his lunch at school. Oh my God, I need to bring it to school. He's going to be so hungry. He's never going to forget his lunch again if I don't bring it to school.
I love that so much, yeah.
If he's the only one sitting there starving, we won't starve, by the way, it's one line.
Right.
But I'm looking, it's like I always remind myself it's the bigger picture, right? If he forgets his homework, I am not going to bring it to school. It is going to be the hardest thing in the world for me to not bring it to school. I'm going to have to remind myself 1,000 times like about the big picture. Right. I'm probably going to cry. Like I will, you know, it's like, it's so hard as a parent. Yeah. But I am also going to know that this is teaching him invaluable lessons about responsibility and character development, right? Get comfortable with your kids' discomfort. It's super hard to do, you know, but we must.
Yeah.
We must.
That's what I was going to say. It must be difficult because even though you know it, like, okay, from a high level, I know that I should be acting like this. I'm sure there's moments, right, where you're just like, I just don't feel like a good mother if you're not giving them what they're asking for.
Oh, totally. And again, it's up to your discretion to differentiate between like core needs.
I like that. Okay.
Versus just fixing things for them.
Okay.
What I'm talking about is fixing things for them. Do not fix things for them. Do not problem solve for them. Do not give them the answers. And it's as simple as like on the drive home from school or wherever you are with your kids, if they voice a concern or a challenge to you, we so often as parents just want to say like, oh yeah, that call her or do this or why don't you do that, or we try to tell our kids what to do all the time. Give them the gift of just space to think through it on their own. Ask a lot of questions instead of giving answers. Those are little things that you can do that's very loving to do, so you're still being a loving parent, but you're encouraging them to problem solve. Right? Yeah. And that's a skill that is just, I think, one of the most important ones to learn.
Those are techniques that you use with your clients as well?
Yeah,
really?
Totally, yeah. I think with anyone, really, if you ask more than answer, it's always going to provide a deeper level of communication. Asking questions is important because it gets them to understand, you know, really where their gut is at and what they're feeling. But I also do like to give tips and tools to clients. I think there's a time and place for everything. And I think some people, depending on who you are, you do need a little guidance and help. I certainly got guidance and help along the way. I think we all need that from certain people. Yeah.
All right, we're talking about kids and everything you do. Like, I was like, okay, I need to talk to her about balance because it's something I'm a little obsessed with, of like, how do people do everything? And, you know, I get asked that a lot. And then I heard you say, we need to eradicate balance.
Yeah.
I wanted to jump up and scream amen when I heard you say that, because I'm like, I don't seek balance for me personally. I actually don't seek it. But so many people these days in society focus on it, and then going back to like, if you don't achieve it now, are you failing? Oh my God. So talk to me about why you think we need to eradicate balance.
Yeah, and I'm a bit of a myth buster in that sense. But yeah, I think our quest for balance, like our quest for happiness, is leading us into a very miserable, dark place. Balance doesn't exist. I mean, have you ever really been balanced in the sense of the word? It's not possible. Really, it's about how do we effectively and efficiently integrate different aspects of who we are and how we want to prioritize our life. That's what it is. That's when people say, like, I'm really balanced, that's what they're doing. They're content with what they've set up for themselves. So I think, again, yes, it comes down to semantics and just understanding what the word means, but also forget about that quest. It's not reasonable. It's not rational. It's not sustainable, or, you know, ever. It's not human.
Yeah.
So how do you prioritize your life is really what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, what gives you a sense of purpose? What gives you meaning? Or if it doesn't, like, that's fine too. A lot of things might not give us meaning or purpose, but we have to do them. So how are you fitting that into your life while also, you know, giving yourself the space you need?
That's so important, because people so focus, especially these days, I want to be fulfilled, I want to have purpose, and they seem to think it needs to be embedded in every single thing they do.
I mean, it can't be.
Right.
You know, it's like some people, yeah, they have a job that they don't love, but it pays the bills, and she's a single mom with 4 kids. Like, what's she going to do? Just like quit? And then how is she going to pay rent? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there are things that we have to do that we might not love, but there's always a way to find a sense of meaning in it, even if we dislike it. So again, it's about shifting our perspective. Maybe you don't like the job, but you really like this one person that you work with. And maybe you need to be spending a little more time with that one person that you work with. Or maybe you don't love what you're doing, but it fulfills a greater good, you know. Or maybe you're you know, in the packaging industry and you hate standing there packaging things, but the thing that you're packaging makes so many people happy. Maybe it's Play-Doh, you know what I mean? So to think about, you know, the layers of what we're doing to find something to latch onto that gives you a sense of meaning, I think is important.
Yeah, I like that, because I've heard you talk about making sure that you're finding that in the moment versus just always focusing on the future, the future, the future.
Yeah, I think, you know, again, that comes back to mindfulness, is like whatever you're doing has to be in some way, you know, giving you a sense of meaning. It doesn't necessarily have to be pleasing to you or give you happiness. I'm specifically not using the word happy. It doesn't have to make you happy. It probably won't. It's impossible to always do things that make you happy, but it should be fulfilling something. It should be either toward a greater good or toward something to help yourself or your family, or a sense of meaning. It should have a nugget, a kernel in there that you can hold on to.
Yeah. So talk to me about mindfulness then. How do you become mindful?
You know, I think training yourself to be present in the moment is important. It can be something as simple as like rubbing your palms together. I talked about this in the book too, and just feeling like the heat that your body can create, that you have that much power that you can create something like that, right? And feeling your palms, your hands, feeling your body, you know, checking in for a moment about where you're at. Are your shoulders like just tensed up? Drop them. Is your tongue at the roof? Is your tongue at the roof of your mouth? Drop it, right? Are your eyebrows like kind of tense? Drop them. Like, so just tuning into little parts of yourself physically can help and start the process of becoming more mindful. So it's more of a subconscious process.
But the body specifically is
the body.
step
I would start with the body.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're all very physical creatures, and that's something we can really hold on to when we start to tune. Oh, okay, yeah, I do feel my shoulders versus like this existential mindfulness bit that not everyone can attach themselves to.
Yeah. Dealing with the body and let's say like nutrition and working out, things like that. I know that you really found, you studied that and were fascinated by how that then affects people as humans, how we act. Talk to me about that and what things as a takeaway, if someone had to put, let's say 2 or 3 things in their day now to improve their life and decision making and things like that, what could they do?
My initial research, sort of back in the day, was connecting the dots between what we eat and how we feel, and there's a huge connection there. I think the bigger...
So this is way before people were actually talking about it as well. I just want to make that point. Because now people are like, oh yeah, of course. But this is before people...
Yes. And I think, nutrition plays a huge role in being resilient, being able to have the fortitude and the wherewithal to sort of overcome and grow from our pain and challenges. You have to have a certain type of nutrition. You have to keep physically fit, and all these things. But I think a bigger piece of the puzzle that's often missed in terms of nutrition and mental health is that when you make healthful choices for your body, you are in a sense telling your brain that you're worth it. And so you are activating a feedback loop in your brain that says to yourself, okay, I am eating this food because I love myself enough to have the energy to buy this food, to make this food, and I'm worth this food. And so you then eat the food, and it's this whole feedback loop that then starts the path of building your self-worth and confidence that has immeasurable benefits and consequences on our mental well-being and our life.
That really hit me. I've never heard someone answer it like that before. That was really powerful because I absolutely believe in, the mind-body connection.
Yeah, I mean, of course, yeah.
But I'd never thought of it from a worthy standpoint.
Right.
It was more like, oh, well, you've done a win. You've told yourself you're going to eat well, so you did.
I mean, sure, it's a win, but it's also that you are worthy of it. And that's huge. Yeah.
Okay, and what are your thoughts on sleep?
Sleep, our brain can't work without sleep, right? So we need it. We absolutely need it. And I would say to keep it as regular as you can. If most people need on average 7 to 8 hours a night, if you need 9, go for it. Go to bed every day at the same time, wake up every day at the same time if you can. Weekends, same, try to keep the same schedule so that your brain can get on a routine. And therefore you're sort of maximizing your ability to weather that daily grind that we all get hit with, right? You're able to think more clearly, you're able to problem solve better and be more flexible too.
Have you noticed a difference within yourself?
Yeah, totally. I mean, if I don't get enough sleep, I'm a mess. It's so hard for me to think quickly, to think clearly, to be all that I am in a day, whether it's as a mother, as a career woman, as a coach, as whatever I do, as a speaker. It's difficult. So I really try to encourage everyone to get the sleep that they need.
Yeah. Why is it like the one thing that that's like the easy one? Oh, just get less sleep. When it's so important.
People don't understand how critical it is. And they think that they can function off of less sleep. It's like almost like a game.
Right.
Like, oh, I can do 6 hours and be fine.
Yeah.
They think they're fine, but they're not actually thriving. They're just surviving, right? And they don't know how much better they could be or how much more efficient they could be if they were getting that extra 2, for example. And I think it's hard these days too. Everyone asks so much of us. A lot of people have virtual work worlds where they're constantly, have to be connected and responding at all hours. A lot of people are on their devices before bedtime, which then triggers our brain and affects our quality of sleep. It is something that needs to be cherished, almost like a holy space, holy ground. And create a bedtime ritual. Take a bath. Like do whatever you need to do. Turn the lights down low. That tells your brain, okay, it's going to be bedtime in an hour. Read. Leave your phone downstairs so that you're not, it's not too easy to grab it right by your bedside. Like whoever says, oh, I love reading books on my devices before bed, it's totally fine. It doesn't affect me at all. Do the research. Research shows that it does. So know what you're up against and make it harder for yourself to do those things that impact your sleep negatively.
Yeah, I love that you're looking at the research. Like,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
so important.
Yeah.
And like in your entire message about resilience, it's all like science-based.
Yeah.
Do you see a difference between being resilient and unbreakable?
Ooh, I love that. I think that being unbreakable is unattainable. I think that having a goal of being unbreakable is not reasonable. I think resilient people are breakable, and that's okay. And part of being broken is about the rebuild, right? So sometimes, you know, some of the biggest breakdowns are like the greatest breakthroughs.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. We're fallible, we're breakable. I mean, but at the end of the day, you always have, you know, your core of who you are and your ability to rebuild, right? We always have that. We always have to hold on to that hope and to our core, you know, abilities. And again, know that these are all skills that we can train ourselves to become, right? It's not something like you said we're born with or without. It's a skill. So learn the tools and you are that powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People, I think, get caught up if they're not there yet, so they just don't try.
Yeah, because everything takes work.
Right.
It's like saying, oh, I'm just not going to go to the gym because I don't look like that guy.
Right,
You know, like,
right.
really? No, you still go to the gym because you want to look a certain way. You still try to, you know, eat the right things to look a certain way, but you don't actually see your brain.
Right.
And so you sort of feel like that's not really necessary to work on, right?
Yeah.
But your emotional and mental well-being is just as important, if not more, but for some reason we don't put in the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes work.
Is it because you think then because we don't see it?
I think it's because there's no like physical, you know, manifestation of
Yeah.
it. But I do think that you do see it. You start to see the depression seep in. You start to see the anxiety. Unfortunately, it's when you start seeing those things that you realize you need the help and the work. But what I advocate is to do it much before you start to see those symptoms, right? It's like someone who, you know, is falling apart and is, you know, morbidly obese to the point that it's impacting their health and they're not okay with it and their doctors are saying they need, you know, to lose weight for their own well-being and health and longevity. That's not when you should start trying to be healthy, right? So your brain works very much in the same way. Don't wait. Don't wait. And it's not to say that all of us are going to get to that like morbid place.
Yeah.
But, you know, this requires daily work. You're worth that effort, right?
Yeah.
It's a preventative sort of, you know, and we all want to feel good, right? So do what it takes, and really what it takes is to train yourself to become resilient. And that's what, you know, the work I do.
Yeah. So you just said like everyone wants to feel good, which is 100%.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you say people need to sit in the discomfort.
Yes, they do.
And how do you do both?
You knowing that sitting in the discomfort is toward making you feel good. It's just part of the process.
Right.
It's like, you know, the roller coaster is going to end at some point, but you're still on it. And going down like really doesn't feel good, but then the going up is like jittery because you know it's about to go down later on. I mean, that's life, right?
Yeah.
You know that just when you're doing awesome, like there's gonna be a dip, right? And you just you've got to enjoy the ride,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like, even though you feel the pain and there's negative and there's challenges, like you're still in it, and you're still you, and you're gonna get through it, and you're gonna grow and strengthen. Right? But within that is going to be a little pain, and that's
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah, I love the notion of failure and the fact that like if you fail, it doesn't make you a failure.
Yes.
And I heard a quote recently about somebody asked Edison, you know, how did you feel about your 1,000 failures? And he's like, there weren't 1,000 failures, there were 1,000 steps.
100%.
And I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
that's so true. And it just
Yeah.
reminded me of you, of saying like, stop looking at the negative and just look at it. How do you spin it? Going back to
Or
perspective.
look at it for what it is.
Right.
And ask and answer the right
Right.
questions. Look for the opportunity within the failure. There's always something that was missed. You know, like Play-Doh started as a wallpaper cleaner. Like it was
Really?
not, you know what I mean? Like Viagra was never meant to be what it is.
That's true.
I mean, all these like the greatest inventions in the world never really started out the way they were like they ended up, right?
Yeah.
So there's always something, there's always a nugget of gold within that, and to look for that. But to do that, you have to be objective. And that requires to tease away the emotion, right? And so how do we do that? We look at, we feel the feels, right? We feel the feeling first so that we can become more objective. We know that failure hurts, that there's like ego involved there, that you want to push it away, but we're not going to, because we want to become more objective, right? I think it's sad what happens in our culture with failure. When we're little, failure is awesome. We're like, yay, you can do it. Like, you're almost walking. Oh, you fell, woohoo, right? We celebrate it as a growing opportunity. Of course she's going to learn to walk. And we're excited that she's falling because we know that within the falling, she's going to learn balance. But as we grow, we don't celebrate our failures in the same way. And there's something really unfortunate about that.
Yeah, I know. I try to almost like, if I fail now, tell myself, well done, Lisa.
Yeah.
I just give myself like the own pat on the back.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to go to the negative.
It is. And it hurts. Like our ego is affected. And we're like, oh, that doesn't feel good. I don't want to admit that I did something wrong.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
really? Me? No. Yeah. Right? But within that, it's like, oh, okay. What have I learned? Like, what was I surprised by? What went right? What didn't go right? Who should I have turned to for help? There's so many things that you can ask yourself to learn and to grow from that failure.
What's the one thing that has impacted you personally the most in order to gain resilience? Like, what's the one thing, the biggest thing you had to change that impacted you?
I think like my tendency to be perfectionist, to always want to do really, really well. I think that was also, part cultural. I come from a Russian upbringing that, really expected excellence, which I'm very grateful for. But I also feel like within that there were expectations that I sort of always wanted to be at a certain level, and that's not sustainable. Yeah. So I think working through that as an adult has been really beneficial for me, and sort of been the work, like the big work that I do for myself. But I think there's so many things. There's so many little things along the way that we can all sort of work on at different times of our lives too. So we're all a work in progress.
Homie, click right here, right now to learn how to get back up, find your worth, and know your value.
Come what may. And it's not that I want anything more to come, but come what may, I know that I will get up again. I've done it one time.